I woke up to an eerie silence. Not the kind that lingers in the early morning when the world is still asleep, but the kind that feels wrong, like the universe itself had forgotten to exist for a moment. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling an unsettling emptiness settle in my chest. Something was off. I couldn't pinpoint it at first, but as I got up and stepped out of my room, the weight of that wrongness only grew heavier. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, it really helps. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss. The house felt still. My parents should have been in the kitchen, my mom making breakfast, my dad sipping coffee. But when I walked in, they were there, only they weren't. My mother stood at the counter, stirring something in a pot, but her eyes never met mine. My father scrolled through his phone, his brow furrowed as if he were deep in thought. "Good morning," I said, expecting the usual sleepy nod from my dad and the absent-minded, "Morning, sweetie," from my mom. Nothing. I stepped closer. "Mom?" She didn't even flinch. "Dad!" My voice wavered. I walked around the table, waved a hand in front of them. No reaction. A cold weight settled in my stomach. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't dreaming. They were simply unaware of me. I grabbed a spoon from the counter and dropped it. The metal clanged against the tile floor. My mom turned slightly, looked at the spoon, then picked it up and placed it back on the counter as if nothing had happened. My breathing quickened. "Mom, look at me." I reached out, my fingers brushing her arm. She didn't even shiver at my touch. My skin tingled with a strange kind of panic. I turned to my father, grabbed his sleeve, yanked it hard enough that any normal person would react. He blinked once, shook his head slightly, and went back to scrolling. Maybe they were messing with me. Maybe this was some elaborate prank. I ran to my room, grabbed my phone, and opened my messages. The last text I had sent was to my best friend, Noah. "Hey, you bringing your Switch today?" I stared at it for a moment before typing, "Dude, something's wrong." I hit send. No reply. A minute passed, then 2, then 5. I checked my other messages. My texts with my parents were still there, but something was off. The bubbles looked wrong. Like a glitch, like they had been copied and pasted from somewhere else. I opened my contacts. My name wasn't in their phones. My chest tightened. School. I needed to go to school. Maybe this was all some weird fever dream and I just needed to shake it off. I ran back downstairs, grabbed my bag and slipped on my shoes. My parents didn't react when I slammed the door shut behind me. The world outside looked normal. Birds chirped, cars passed by. The neighbor's dog barked at a passing jogger. But the normalcy felt like an illusion, like the set of a play where if you pushed too hard, the backdrop would tear and reveal something else behind it. I reached school, and for a moment I let out a shaky breath. This was reality. It had to be. Kids were laughing, lockers slammed shut, teachers shuffled papers. I found Noah at his usual spot by the lockers, talking to some guys from the soccer team. Relief flooded me. "Noah!" I called. He didn't turn. I frowned and jogged closer. "Noah, come on, man, I know you hear me." He kept talking. I reached out and grabbed his shoulder. "Dude, say something." He turned then, but not towards me. Towards someone else. And when he laughed, when he spoke, I realized with stomach-turning horror that I had heard this conversation before. It was the exact same exchange we had had yesterday. The same words, the same pauses. It was as if someone had rewound time and pressed play, except I wasn't part of it. I stepped back, my head spinning, my hands were shaking. I needed a mirror. I pushed through the crowd, past students who didn't even flinch when I brushed against them. I ran into the nearest bathroom and froze when I looked at my reflection. It was delayed, just slightly. When I lifted my hand, it took half a second longer for the reflection to follow. My chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Then, as I stood there, my reflection smiled. I don't remember how I got here. One moment I was staring at my reflection, watching it move on its own, grinning at me like it knew something I didn't. The next, I was lying on the cold ground, staring up at a gray, overcast sky that stretched endlessly in every direction. No walls, no buildings, no sun, just an empty sky that looked like it had been painted with fading brushstrokes. I sat up, my head pounding, my body aching in a way that felt unnatural, like I had been pulled through something I wasn't supposed to survive. The air was thick, heavy, yet completely still. I wasn't cold or hot, just weightless, as if I wasn't fully there. The ground beneath me was smooth and dark, like stone polished down to nothing. I wasn't in the school bathroom anymore. I wasn't anywhere familiar. Then I heard voices, distant at first, then growing louder, like echoes bouncing off invisible walls. Children's voices, laughing, whispering, calling out. But there was no joy in them, only an eerie hollowness. I turned, my heart hammering, and saw shadows moving in the distance. Figures, small and uncertain, lingering at the edges of my vision. They were children, but something was wrong with the way they stood, the way their bodies swayed ever so slightly, as if they weren't completely real. A hand grabbed my wrist. I gasped and turned to see a girl standing beside me. She looked about my age, maybe a little older, with dark, tangled hair and pale skin. Her fingers were ice cold. "You're new," she said. It wasn't a question. "Where am I?" My voice came out dry, cracked, as if I hadn't spoken in days. She tilted her head slightly, studying me with an expression that wasn't quite curiosity, not quite pity. "You're where the forgotten go," she said, "the ones who disappeared without a trace." A sudden wave of dizziness hit me and I stumbled back. This wasn't real, this was a dream, a hallucination, a trick. "No," I whispered. "No, I'm not supposed to be here." She didn't argue, she just looked at me with those dark, knowing eyes and nodded toward the distance. "Come with me." I hesitated, but what choice did I have? There was nothing else, no roads, no doors, no way out. Just an endless, silent expanse. I followed her. As we walked, more children emerged from the emptiness, stepping forward like ghosts pulled out of the fog. Some were younger than me, others older, their eyes hollow and tired. They didn't speak, they only watched, as if they had seen this exact moment play out before and already knew how it would end. A building appeared on the horizon, though I hadn't seen it before. It was massive, old, with towering gray walls that seemed to stretch into the sky. It reminded me of an orphanage, or maybe a boarding school, the kind you see in black and white photos from decades ago. No windows, just a single heavy door at the front, slightly ajar, waiting. "This is home," the girl said. I muttered. "My home is..." But when I tried to picture it, my mind blanked. I could see flashes, my mother stirring a pot, my father scrolling through his phone, Noah laughing by the lockers, but they felt distant, like memories belonging to someone else. The girl pushed open the door and I stepped inside. The air changed immediately. It smelled like dust, old paper, something faintly metallic. The walls were lined with empty picture frames. The hallway stretched into the distance, flickering under dim yellow lights that buzzed softly. I could hear movement, footsteps, whispers, but I couldn't see where they were coming from. We reached a room at the end of the hall where a tall woman stood waiting. She wore a long black dress, her face pale and severe, eyes sharp enough to cut through stone. She looked at me the way a teacher might look at a late student, expecting me, but unimpressed. "Another one," she said, not to me, but to the girl. "He's number 7, the girl replied. The woman nodded and finally met my gaze. "Welcome," she said. "You are where you belong." I shook my head. "No, there's been a mistake." She sighed as if she had heard it 1,000 times before. "There are no mistakes here." My pulse pounded in my ears. "What is this place?" She gave me a small, unreadable smile. "This is where those who are erased from the world come to stay." I felt my stomach twist. "No," I said, louder now, my voice shaking. "I'm not erased. I'm not..." "Hey, tell me," she interrupted, her head tilting slightly. "Who remembers you?" I opened my mouth. My mother, my father, my friends. Those were the names I wanted to say, the people who should have been looking for me, who should have been worried that I was gone. But their faces in my mind were already fading, their voices growing distant. My throat tightened. The woman's expression softened just slightly, but it wasn't kindness, it was confirmation. "No one remembers you," she said, "and that means you don't exist." I didn't sleep that night, not because I wasn't tired, I was exhausted, but because I was afraid that if I closed my eyes, I would wake up even further from the world I once knew. The orphanage, or whatever this place was, never seemed to rest. The walls creaked like they were breathing. Footsteps echoed down the hallways, though I never saw who they belonged to. The other children whispered among themselves, their voices too low to catch, as if discussing something I wasn't supposed to hear. I lay on the small, stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, trying to hold on to whatever scraps of my old life I could remember. My mother's voice, my father's face, Noah's laughter. Each second that passed made them feel less real. At some point, I gave up trying to sleep and sat up, my eyes adjusting to the dim glow of the hallway light filtering through the half-open door. The room was small, just a bed, a dresser, and a window that showed nothing but blackness outside. No stars, no moon, just emptiness. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood. If this place wanted me to believe I didn't exist, then I needed proof that I did. The hallway stretched out in both directions, lined with doors identical to mine. Some were slightly ajar, revealing dark rooms where shapes shifted in the gloom. Others were shut tight, as if whatever was inside was meant to stay hidden. The air smelled of dust and something faintly metallic, like old coins left to rust. I walked carefully, my bare feet silent against the cold floor. The walls were lined with empty picture frames. I stopped in front of one, staring at the faint outline of dust where a photo had once been. Something had been here, someone had been here, but they were gone now. A sound made me freeze, a whisper, so quiet it could have been a trick of my mind. But then I heard it again, soft, urgent. I turned a corner and saw a faint glow coming from beneath a door at the end of the hall. It was slightly open, just enough for a sliver of golden light to spill into the darkness. The whispering came from inside. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to turn back, to return to my room and pretend I never saw it, but something stronger pushed me forward. I reached out and pressed my fingers against the old wooden door. It creaked as it swung inward. The room was unlike any other I had seen in this place. It was a library filled with towering shelves that stretched impossibly high, disappearing into shadows above. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and candle wax. Dozens of books lay scattered across the wooden floor, their pages filled with names, thousands, maybe millions of them, written in small, precise handwriting. Some names had been crossed out, others had been erased entirely, leaving behind nothing but blank spaces. In the center of the room stood the girl who had first spoken to me when I arrived. She was hunched over a book, her fingers tracing the words with an almost desperate intensity. She looked up when she heard me enter, her eyes wide, caught between fear and defiance. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Neither are you," I said. For a moment, she just stared at me, then sighed and stepped back, letting me see the book she had been reading. My breath caught in my throat. It was a record of the forgotten. Names filled the pages in neat rows, some faded to the point of disappearing. I stepped closer, scanning the list, my heart pounding. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I would know it when I found it. And then, at the very bottom of the page, written in darker ink than the rest, was a name that hadn't faded at all. Jesus. A chill ran down my spine. "This isn't possible," I whispered. The girl's hands trembled as she closed the book. "They erased him," she said, "just like they erased us." I shook my head. No, he's... My mind couldn't even form the right words. Jesus wasn't just a person. He wasn't like us. He couldn't be forgotten. She looked at me then, her dark eyes filled with something that made my stomach twist. "Do you remember him?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but the truth slammed into me with the force of a tidal wave. I knew the name. I knew what it meant. But when I tried to recall an image, a story, anything specific, my mind went blank. It was like trying to remember a dream after waking up. There was a sense of something important, something real, but the details slipped through my fingers. My throat went dry. I don't know. She exhaled shakily. None of us do. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about the other children. Whoever controlled this place, whoever decided who was erased and who remained, had done something impossible. They had erased him. Before I could speak, the air in the room shifted. The candles flickered violently, as if a wind had passed through, though the air was still. A deep, low creak echoed through the walls. The girl's eyes widened in terror. "They know we're here," she whispered. The door behind me slammed shut. The door slammed shut behind me with such force that the entire room seemed to shudder. The candles flickered violently, their flames stretching unnaturally, casting shadows that twisted and writhed along the walls. The girl beside me let out a sharp breath, her fingers gripping the book so tightly that her knuckles turned white. My own pulse thundered in my ears as I turned, expecting to see something or someone forcing the door closed. But there was nothing, just the suffocating weight of something unseen pressing down on the air around us. "Patently no," the girl whispered, barely audible. "We shouldn't have looked." I didn't ask who they were. I could feel it, the presence. Something ancient, watching, waiting. The sensation crawled along my skin like unseen hands brushing against me. I took a step back, my breath uneven, my mind racing. The name on the page, Jesus, was still burning in my thoughts, a single unmovable point in the chaos around me. Then the room changed. It happened in an instant. One moment, we were standing in the dimly lit library, the scent of old paper and candle wax thick in the air. The next, the walls seemed to stretch outward, distorting, warping, pulling away into an impossible distance. The bookshelves vanished. The floor beneath my feet crumbled into nothing. The girl reached for me, but I was already falling into silence. For a long time, seconds, minutes, hours, I couldn't tell. There was nothing. No sound, no light. Just an emptiness so vast it swallowed me whole. Then, from that nothingness, came a voice. "Do you remember me?" It wasn't loud. It wasn't forceful. It didn't demand or accuse. It was calm, steady, like the sound of waves meeting the shore, like something I had known once but had long since forgotten. And yet, it wasn't unfamiliar. It was warm in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Did I remember him? I knew the name. I had seen it in books. I had heard people say it before. But when I tried to remember anything specific, what he looked like, what he had done, it was like grasping at smoke. The more I reached, the less I held. I wasn't falling anymore. My feet touched solid ground, though I couldn't see it. The void around me shifted, deep and endless, like the space between stars. And then, in front of me, he appeared. He was standing there, not in the way a person stands, but in the way light fills a room. I couldn't describe him, not really. His face was both familiar and unknown, shifting like a memory that refused to settle. He wasn't blinding, wasn't overwhelming, but the presence of him pressed against my very soul, and I knew that I was standing before something far beyond my understanding. I swallowed hard. "Are you..." My voice cracked. "Are you him?" He smiled, and it wasn't like any smile I had ever seen before. It wasn't just an expression. It was understanding, kindness, sorrow, all wrapped into something infinitely deeper than what could fit on a human face. He said simply, The words sent a cold shiver through me. I frowned. What do you mean? I was remembered, he said, and now I am not. The weight of what he was saying crushed into me like a tidal wave. The forgotten, the erased. He wasn't just missing from history. He wasn't just removed. He had been undone. But that's impossible, I whispered. You're supposed to... My thoughts tangled together, tripping over themselves. You can't just disappear. You're supposed to be everywhere. His eyes held something ancient, something vast, something immeasurable. Do you remember me? He asked again. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I wanted to say yes, I wanted to be certain, but the truth was, I didn't know. I had seen his name, I had heard about him, but had I ever truly remembered him? Had I ever known him? His gaze didn't waver, didn't press, didn't demand. He simply waited. I exhaled shakily. I don't know. He nodded once, and in that nod there was no anger, no disappointment, only understanding. That is why I am here. The void around us pulsed, as if it was alive, breathing. In the distance, I saw shapes flickering in and out of existence. Memories, people, places, entire worlds blinking in and out like dying stars. This place, he said, is where the forgotten go. Not just people, not just names, ideas, truths, everything that once was, but is no longer. I felt something tighten in my chest. Then that means... You're gone? His expression softened. Not yet. I swallowed. Why? His gaze held mine, steady and unwavering. Because you are here. The meaning behind those words sent a chill through my bones. If I was here, then that meant I was forgotten too. That meant I didn't exist in the world I came from. That meant... A sudden pressure crushed against my chest, and I stumbled forward, gasping for air. The void around us trembled. His eyes flickered toward something behind me. May I coming? He said. I turned, and for the first time, I saw them. Shadows. Not like the ones cast by light, but something deeper, something worse. They moved like liquid, seeping toward us, writhing, twisting. Their forms were not solid, not fixed. They were constantly shifting, stretching, pulling apart and reforming, like something caught between existence and non-existence. I felt a primal terror surge through me. They have come to finish what they started, he said. His voice didn't waver, but there was something solemn in it. They do not want me remembered. I turned back to him, my heart hammering. Then what do I do? His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I felt the weight of something immeasurable press into my very soul. Remember, he said. The shadows lunged. The shadows lunged, and everything around me collapsed. The void, the flickering shapes, even the presence of him, gripped away as if reality itself was being erased in front of me. I felt something claw at my mind, something cold and merciless, pulling, tearing, unraveling my thoughts like threads coming loose from a frayed piece of fabric. It wasn't pain. It was worse than pain. It was absence, a hollowing out of everything I was, until I was nothing but a shell, a forgotten whisper on the edge of silence. Then, light. It wasn't blinding, not like I expected. It was soft, warm, cutting through the darkness like dawn breaking over a lifeless landscape. I gasped, feeling myself slam back into existence, my breath ragged, my pulse hammering in my ears. The shadows recoiled, shrinking away from the light, twisting violently as if they were being burned by something they couldn't see. I turned my head, searching for him, but he was no longer beside me. He was fading. Not like the shadows, not violently, not in agony, but in a way that was infinitely worse. It was quiet, slow, like a candle being snuffed out. His form, once steady and absolute, now flickered like a dying star, his features blurred, slipping away from my mind even as I looked at him. I knew he was there, but the more I tried to focus, the less I could hold on to him. It was as if something had reached into my head and wiped him away, leaving only the vague impression that something had once been in that space. I stumbled toward him, my voice breaking. "No, wait, stop, you can't." He turned to me, smiling faintly. The weight of his gaze settled over me. Not heavy, but vast, as if I had been given a glimpse of something infinite, something eternal, and my mind was struggling to comprehend it. "You have to remember," he said. The words struck me like a physical force, rattling inside my skull. I wanted to remember, I needed to, but it was slipping. My mind felt fogged, unfocused, like something was pressing down on me, forcing me to let go. Every time I tried to grasp at the memories, they scattered like dust in the wind. My pulse quickened in panic. My breath hitched. I can't. He didn't look disappointed. He didn't look afraid. But there was something in his expression. Something deep, sorrowful, yet understanding. He nodded, almost as if he had expected this. "That is the price," he murmured. I didn't understand. Not until I felt it. It started as a dull ache in my chest, a pressure that built slowly, spreading outward. At first, I thought it was fear, the remnants of adrenaline still burning through me. But then the pressure turned into something else. A pulling sensation, subtle at first, then stronger. It was like someone had hooked something deep inside me and was tugging, not at my body, but at me. And then I saw it. The edges of my hands, my fingers, they were turning pale, translucent. I was disappearing. Panic shot through me like electricity. But the moment I tried to move, my body resisted. The more I fought it, the heavier I felt, as if something was weighing me down, draining me of everything that made me real. The price of memory. "They're taking me," I choked out, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded again. "Because you remember." The realization hit me like a blow to the chest. The forgotten couldn't exist, not truly. The moment someone remembered them, the balance broke. And now, because I knew, because I had seen him, because I had spoken his name, I was paying the cost. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. No, there has to be another way." "Please," he said, "but it is not easy." I looked at him, desperate. "Tell me, please." The shadows inched closer again, cautious, waiting. The light surrounding us was growing dim. "You have to make them remember." His voice was steady, but the weight of what he was saying settled deep into my bones. The moment he said it, I understood what it meant. It wasn't just about knowing him. That wasn't enough. It never had been. People knew the name. People had spoken it, written it, seen it in books, in stories, in songs. But remembering, truly remembering, was different. It wasn't just a name, it wasn't just an idea, it was something that had to be felt, experienced, lived. And I had to bring it back. "But how?" My voice broke. He smiled again, the light flickering in his eyes. "Live." The moment the word left his lips, the world around me shattered. I was falling again, spiraling backward through the empty void, my mind splitting apart, my body weightless, pulled through time and space at a speed beyond comprehension. Flashes of memories, mine, not mine, ours, rushed past me in a blur. Faces I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Words I had never spoken but had heard before. Pain, love, hope. A sacrifice that had been made long before I ever existed. And then, impact. I hit the ground, gasping, choking, existing. The sensation of my own body returned in a rush, too much, all at once. My heart pounded wildly, my lungs burned, and for a split second I thought I was going to black out again. But I didn't. I was back. I could feel it, the solidness of the world, the weight of reality pressing against me. I opened my eyes, expecting to see the endless void, the library, the forgotten hallways. There's a hole in me, and psychopathy fills it. But I was somewhere else. I was home. I was lying on my bedroom floor, my hands trembling, my breath ragged. My bed, my desk, the posters on my wall, it was all there, exactly as I had left it. The light from the window streamed in, casting warm golden patches across the floor. Outside, I could hear birds, cars, the distant hum of the world moving as if nothing had happened, as if I had never been gone. But I had been, and I was not the same. I pushed myself up, every limb shaking, my body screaming in exhaustion. My heart was still racing, my thoughts tangled, but one thing burned clearer than anything else. I remembered him. But the question was, would anyone else? I sat on the floor, my breath uneven, my hands trembling. I was home. I was back. But the weight of something unseen pressed against me, heavy and suffocating. The air in my room felt wrong. Thicker, charged with something watching, waiting. I reached for my phone, my fingers barely steady enough to unlock it. No missed calls, no messages, no signs of worry. It was as if I had never disappeared. But I had. And I remembered. That was the problem. His last words echoed in my mind. You have to make them remember. But how? If speaking his name nearly erased me, if searching for him brought up nothing, then what was left? My stomach twisted as I stood, forcing my shaking legs to move. I stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding. The walls seemed to stretch ever so slightly, bending in ways they shouldn't. I reached the living room and stopped cold. The photographs on the walls were gone. The frames remained, hanging in perfect alignment, but inside them was nothing. Just blank, empty spaces where memories should have been. I turned to the bookshelf. The family albums were still there. I grabbed one, flipped it open. Page after page of emptiness. Every picture, every moment, erased. They were already rewriting things. I swallowed hard and ran to the kitchen, grabbing a notebook from the counter. My hands shook as I scrawled his name across the page. The moment my pen lifted, the ink faded. My breath caught. I tried again, the same result. It wasn't just forgetting, it was active erasure. My pulse pounded as I snatched my phone and typed his name into the search bar. No results, no error, no blocked content. Just nothing. Like he had never existed at all. If I couldn't write it, if I couldn't search for it, then I had to do something they couldn't erase. I opened my camera and hit record. My name is Daniel, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And I don't think I exist anymore. I hesitated, but only for a second. If I stopped now, I might never get another chance. The air around me was changing, thickening, warning me. I ignored it. There's something I need to tell you, I continued. Something they don't want you to remember. I told them about the library, the erased names, the void, the shadows creeping at the edges of existence. I told them about him. Not just as a name, not just as an idea, but as something I had felt. A presence so real, so undeniable, that even the ones who had tried to erase him feared what would happen if people remembered. The walls trembled. You remember him, I said. Maybe not clearly, maybe not consciously, but somewhere, deep down, you do, and that means he still exists. A sharp crack split the air. I turned just as the mirror behind me shattered, shards of glass tumbling to the floor in slow motion. The shadows in the corners of the room thickened, curling inward, writhing like something angry. My breath hitched, but I didn't stop recording. I tried to erase him, I whispered. But we can bring him back. The weight in the air crushed against me, and for a moment, I thought I would be pulled back into the void. I hit send. The video uploaded. The message was out. Now it was their turn to remember. The moment the video uploaded, the room seemed to exhale. The weight pressing against me lifted just slightly, the air no longer suffocating but still thick with an unseen presence. I didn't know if it had worked. I didn't know if anyone had seen it yet. But the message was out. I had done what I could. Now, all I could do was wait. I stared at the screen, watching as the upload completed, as the video settled into place. waiting to be watched, shared, remembered. My hands still shook, my breath uneven. The shattered glass on the floor reflected fractured images of myself, distorted and strange. The shadows in the corners of the room hadn't disappeared, but they were no longer shifting, no longer creeping closer. Then my phone vibrated. A notification, a comment. I opened it with trembling fingers. I don't know why, but I feel like I know what you're talking about. Another appeared. This is crazy, but I think I remember too. Then another. And another. It was spreading. I exhaled, my chest tightening. This was it. This was how it started. One memory at a time, one person reaching back into the void and pulling him out, refusing to let go. But then something changed. The room darkened, not like a light had gone out, but like something was being undone. The air shifted, bending inward, and I felt the pull before I saw it. The shadows weren't waiting anymore. They were moving, curling toward me, folding the space around them like ink bleeding across paper. No, not now, not when I was so close. I pushed myself to my feet, stumbling back, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The shadows surged forward, faster than before, angry. The mirror on the wall cracked again, the floor beneath me warping as if I were standing on something no longer stable. They were trying to take me back. I clenched my fists. I wasn't going. Not this time. I wasn't sure what I was doing, if I was fighting them or just refusing to disappear. But I held my ground. My mind burned with the weight of everything I had seen, everything I had remembered. The library, the erased names. Him. I focused on that last part, clinging to it with everything I had left. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The darkness shuddered. The shadows froze, flickering like a corrupted image, their forms twisting, unraveling. The pressure in the room lessened, and in its place, something else took hold. A warmth, a presence. Not unseen, not hidden, but felt. They weren't just trying to erase him anymore. They were afraid of what came next. I exhaled shakily, feeling the shift ripple through the air. The battle wasn't over, but something fundamental had changed. A crack in the foundation, a memory slipping through. I looked back at my phone. More notifications, more people remembering. It had begun. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know how far this would go or how hard they would try to stop it. But one thing was certain. He was no longer forgotten.